Hi, everyone, and welcome to Security Talks. We're already on episode 5, and today we have got with us an old friend of mine, Greg Collins. I've known Greg for many years now, since he was at Harrods Bank. You may have heard of those guys from the past. And Greg's going to introduce himself. We'll go into more detail, but suffice to say, when it comes to technical and security, Greg knows his stuff, and he's been involved in a number of exciting projects over years. His current position's a little bit, we can't really talk about that, but Greg will explain why. So, with no further ado, over to you, Greg. Nice to see you again, sir.
Hello, Adam. Hello, Vin.
All right.
How's things? I've known Vin for a long time. We both worked back together back in the day when it was just almost the internet was coming out when we started working together, wasn't it, Vin? It was that
You're
long
making me
ago.
feel old. You're making me feel old.
So, what I do is if I describe myself, so I currently hold a position of a cybersecurity lead, which is a bit of a nonsense, if I'm being honest. I see myself as an engineer. I'm an engineer. The way I would describe it when I talk at things, I describe it as I'm a firewall engineer who's punching above his weight. That's what I know. I'm a subject matter expert when it comes to firewalls, layer 7 firewalls, secure network design. I've stuck my toe in pen testing. I did it for a while. One of the things I realized is pen testing has changed. If you're not an application security guy, you can't really do pen testing anymore, because pen testing, you can automate it. Serverless, you can't really test it because everything's abstracted from you. Cloud stuff, it's really, really difficult to do. So standard pen testing is on-prem or infrastructure as service stuff. To really be a pen tester these days, it's an application security engineer. So it's completely different. So I know I couldn't do that because by default, I'm not a developer. By default, I don't code. I was always a subject matter expert in networking. So I've gone from place to place. I'm at my third startup now. I met Vin at Harrods Bank, and that wasn't quite a startup because it was a 100-year-old bank, but a 100-year-old bank that used paper. So that gig there was, how do we turn this brand and how do we turn this thing from a very, very old DOS-based system into a secure network and into a secure environment and get it ready for big launch, make a bit of money out of it, get the customers in, get your deposits, get your mortgages out. That's what that gig was about. We took that to as far as it could go, and then the people that were putting the money in got fed up and they walked off. So that got sold. So Harrods Bank closed down, but that was a wonderful, wonderful journey. That was a wonderful transformation journey to basically a flat network and a DOS server, to getting it in the cloud, to getting it in the sky, to getting the processes that you need in place to secure in the network, to separate the network. It was a really, really cool gig. I really, really enjoyed that one. But that came to an end, and then you move on to the next one. I tried a bit corporate. I went to one to the big financial houses, and I lasted 4 months because no one wanted to do anything. It was a case of coming from having to do stuff into, well, you need to ask your man over there. He's been here 8 years. And so if you get friendly with him, you might actually get the stuff you want done. And I'm thinking, really? But we need to do it because it's a security risk. So that didn't work for me. So I got picked up again by another bunch who I worked with before at Harrods to do a brand you'll see out there at the moment, Alica. So Alica Bank was the next one that we did. And I can mention Alica because I don't work for them anymore. I won't give any away of their trade secrets just in case. But that was from a whiteboard. That was from a whiteboard. How do you build a bank from a whiteboard? Now, Adam will speak doubly on this, how many mistakes you make when you go from on-prem to cloud. What you do is you create a big data center in the sky and you don't trust anything that Azure gives you or AWS gives you or Google Cloud gives you, because you know a certain way of doing it and you are restricted by your own way of thinking. So what you do is you make a load of mistakes. And you get your first one done, you get it launched in the sky, you get your application gateways up, you get your security in there, you get your layer 7 firewalls, and you realize it's not going to work like that. And you have to trust things like Microsoft SQL databases as a service, because what you're running into costs of 50, 60 grand a year to run databases when you could be paying 100, 200 pound a month to run it. But the reason you're not doing it is because you don't trust it.
Yeah.
So that gig went on. So we did that gig there. We moved on from there. And again, at one point, you get to about 3 years in a startup and you think, You've gone from the fun stuff, you've gone from the build, you're now getting into the day-to-day running, and you get the GRC people saying, have you done this? Have you ticked that box? Have you done this? And you just want to go and do something different. So move on to the next one where I'm at the moment, which was the same sort of journey. I'm not going to really talk about who I'm with at the moment because it would be professionally discourteous to do it. But it's the same journey. How do you do it? That's me in a nutshell, what I've done. What do I think about cybersecurity? And what do I think about information security? And what do I think about security? I've been doing this so long, you can tell by the big white beard that I'm a little bit jaded by some of it. So I tend to think cybersecurity is an encompassing term. And what it encompasses is two separate disciplines. And using the term cybersecurity to explain those two separate disciplines, it does what we do as a disservice, because in cybersecurity, there's two disciplines. There's technical security. That's where you know how we defend against people like Adam. So how would Adam get in? How would Adam get into, and well versed in working with pen testers to do it? In old days, the more I harden the outside, and Adam will speak on this one, the more I harden the outside, he'll send a cleaner in with, as he mentioned in his last podcast, with a Raspberry Pi. Stick it under the desk, get on the network, sideways elevate. How do I do that? Okay. Modern world is completely different. When you get serverless, how do I do the same thing? Can't get into an office. I'm working from home. Most people work from home. How do I, so it becomes about the compromise of the endpoint then. So how do I compromise that endpoint? So if I put a really hard front door in, and when I try to build networks and look at how we do that, the more front doors you've got, the more problems you've got. The more public IPs you've got, the more problems you've got. So anything with a public IP is a target. So you have as little public facing stuff as possible. So let's break that down into two areas. So IPsec and VPNs, that's different. IPsec and VPNs, you have to use public IP addresses, but you can fairly much secure them properly because of the nature of the way they work. And once you've got an IP filter on it, you know the basic underlying IPsec secures what you're going at. If you've got a public-facing application, very, very, very different indeed. The controls you've got around that public-facing application, effectively, you don't need to get into someone's office to get access to it because it's there. Or if I needed to get to what's behind it, then I'm looking at a weak control on the endpoint. So if I can look at a weak control on the endpoint, where I don't have the right level of control, I'm not using layer 7 firewalls, I'm not securing people's access from home, bang, you get compromise. And we're all talking about the same thing, and we're all nodding our head about the same thing here, which is the big stuff that's just happened in the UK. Big brands, we won't mention who they are, but big brands got done. Big brands, what they did was missing attention to detail. So attention to detail is, where can a compromise come from? Because it will be something teeny tiny that you've missed that gets you. In this instance, it wasn't something teeny tiny that got them. It was the fact that they hadn't done due diligence against the partner they were working with. They've taken their controls. They've been told that we do this, we do that, we do this. Guarantee you we're secure.
Absolutely.
That's where it comes from.
So, and this is an interesting idea, and I see it all the time when I'm carrying out testing, is people have these comparatively hardened exteriors now. They've locked down everything, and they're like, right, we've got security sorted, we've got limited stuff hanging out on the exterior. And then you get inside, and they've got this soft, squishy underbelly where there's a lot of trust, and it's still easy to move around in the environment just as a normal person, not even a privileged individual. And I think we talked a bit when we were setting up this podcast about talking to both the decision makers, but also the doers who have to solve this problem, which is an absolute pain to do well, frankly, as we both know. What would be your sort of top 3 things to do if you're like, right, got a limited amount of resource and money to get this thing done? How do we lock down an internal environment?
Just the phrase I use in the TLA, because we always use TLAs, 3-letter acronyms.
Yep.
sometimes known as XTLAs, which are extended three-letter acronyms, also known
Yep.
as four-letter acronyms, is BFNs. Your enemy is a BFN, big flat network.
Yep.
Absolute enemy. So what Adam does, he's looking for lateral. All the time it's lateral. So he wants to get from point A to point B. So take, for example, I'm working on a network. So I've got this nice wireless network that I've got here, for example, and then I've got a wired network and they share the same subnet. Right. So if you compromise one, you're in the other. Where's my gateway held? So the answer is always your gateway. Where is your gateway held and what does my gateway do? And I guarantee you that a lot of places you're going to go in, their gateway is a router or a switch, a layer 3 switch. And that layer 3 switch has no controls on it. It's got some routing controls. It's got no controls. You can't write an ACL for it because the ACLs you would write on it don't really work properly because they don't really work at layer. They work at layer 4, but if you can, the way, for example, a Cisco one is, they'll ignore sins. If you don't put a sin in, they won't care. That's the only thing they're looking for, a sin. They're not looking for the rest. So you can bypass them really, really easily. You can get past all of that to get to a device on the other network that you can elevate from. So if I can elevate from there, it's a Windows Active Directory device, it's a domain controller, it's something that I can elevate my privileges on. That's what Adam's trying to do. He's trying to get to this box here. So if he gets to this box here, he's establishing his command and control. So next thing he does is he gets his command and control and say, right, what can I get this to talk to the outside world on? So as soon as he can get to talk to the outside world, he's going to put something on there like a netcat listener, which is going to establish a connection out. And to do that, because Adam's not stupid, he's got to this device here. He's probably got a URL categorized on the internet. So you've got a URL filter that should be categorized as malware, should be categorized as unknown, which will be blocked by your URL filter. But he's got one that's categorized as computers and internet info. Bang, you're done. So he's gone on an encrypted channel. He's used 443 so the traffic looks normal. You won't see it if you're not decrypting it. You don't even know this is happening. The only idea that you've got something is happening on this device is if its antivirus is any good or its endpoint control is any good. It's the only way you know. If it's Linux, it's a lot harder because who actually puts clam and all of this stuff on Linux server? People don't do it because it's trusted. Linux is fine. You can trust it. It's fine. No problem. So in answer to your question, what do I do? First thing, segmentation, 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 segmentation. Right?
Okay.
You segment absolutely everything. So when I build a network, I will build 4 subnets, for an example, and they get split down. Every gateway for that firewall is held on a firewall, on a layer 7 firewall. All switches are layer 2. So you trust VLANs, you trust that native VLAN stuff that one VLAN can't talk to another. They are segmented to get from network A to get network B. You've got to go through a firewall. To get from network A, go.
Let's pause that just there because there is a load of technical stuff in there, and I'm aware not everyone in the audience is super technical. We've got subnets, we've got gateways, we've got switches. There's a lot of devices in here. If you're a decision maker, if you've got a team under you and you're figuring out how to sort out the giant mess that is your network, and you've got levers to pull, what are we talking about when we say segmentation and subnet?
Segmentation is I'm trying to think of a suitable analogy for it, but it's like people for roles. You wouldn't expect to have one department that does everything. I'm pulling this analogy out of my head at the moment, so it's probably going to be a bit rubbish, but it's like you've just got one computer system that everyone does, that everyone uses, that does everything. It sends you mail, it does your instant messages, it does your banking, it does everything. You've just got this one magical thing that everyone uses that does the same thing. Okay, it doesn't exist. That doesn't exist. You have systems that do certain things. So what I'm saying when I mention these is per the function that device does or per the function you're trying to achieve, segment it. You do that only, and I'll keep that section there for you to do only what you need to do. I'm not reducing any of your productivity at all. I'm just controlling the ability from one system to talk to another. So you want to call it whatever you want, walls.
So we're dividing up the environment based on function,
exactly,
what that thing's doing,
exactly,
and making sure they can't randomly just talk to each other
exactly.
And
let's paint a real world scenario. Sorry.
Yeah. And when you were talking about the devices and the gateways, what are we talking about there?
Devices and gateways would be, let's not get boring on switches, but a switch is where you physically connect your laptops to now, or you can your PCs. Old money, it was you use switches for PCs, but now everyone uses Wi-Fi. So most of your networks is Wi-Fi. So the simplest way I've got to explain what a switch does, or a scenario is probably going to work the best here. Now I guarantee you Adam's done this. If I can sit outside your office and I thought I've been sold this lovely Wi-Fi solution by another, and it's got this thing that it does, and it says, I will only advertise my SSIDs to the glass, and the SSID is what you connect to, like Greg's network, for example. So when you come into the office in the morning, you connect to Greg's network and you get on and you do your job, and you do all of this sort of stuff. Now, I've built Greg's network, so it will only broadcast this far. So don't worry, someone outside the building won't be able to see this unless you're Adam with a boom. And Adam can see that with a boom. And so Adam said, right, I'm going to start listening to this network here, this Wi-Fi network. This Wi-Fi network, meanwhile, connects to your switch, and it's a big flat network under the switch.
Yeah.
Right? No walls, no nothing. So Adam sits there sniffing. Adam will sniff the traffic because he can do that because he's got this big boom, and he's captured the key. He's captured a WPA key because he's used some really clever stuff called a rainbow table to decrypt what's there. So he knows what's in there. He knows the key. So he's got in and bang, magic. He's got an IP address. If he gets an IP address, he's on your network. So if he gets an IP address on your network, the next thing he's going to do is what's that way? What's that way? So what else on here can I get hold of? So what we're going to do is we're going to say, okay, for what that scenario we've just created is the only thing Adam can talk to if he connects to that is one subnet, is one network. It's for Wi-Fi only. So when Adam goes to compromise to the next part, or he goes to look for the next part, oh, there's a big fat layer 7 firewall into, and he'll look at the connection that's coming through this layer 7 firewall and say, that's naughty. I've got an intrusion detection system here. That's very naughty. Only a hacker would ever do that. That's your first element of compromise gone. You stopped it. So Adam now needs to think of another way to do it.
So a couple of things to talk about here, and what Greg is talking about is the idea of having an external attacker who's not necessarily in the building, but they're trying to connect to your Wi-Fi. They've got a big antenna that allows them to pick up your wireless network, connect in, and as soon as they got that connection, they don't even need to be in the room. They're off to the races. And the question is, if you get that connection, you're able to get on that network. What can they see? Where can they go? What can they access? And we're getting into the layer 7 firewalls, the network controls, and this is super unusual to see on pen tests. And some people pick them up more now, but it is unusual to see really good quality network filtering, really good quality intrusion prevention systems. Greg, how the hell do you implement network detection, network intrusion prevention in a sensible way without spending an absolute ton of money and without creating just like a ridiculous amount of overhead for yourself?
It's not that hard, believe it or not. It's really not that hard. And we went back to Harrods Bank. Let's go back to Harrods Bank. So the journey at Harrods Bank, and it was a BFN again, big flat network.
Yep.
So the first thing, there's a tool out there, because there's a tool that does everything. There's a tool out there that's called Security Onion. And what Security Onion used to do, you used to be able to get a laptop and you used to be able to install a massive sniffer. This massive sniffer will tell you everything that's going on, because what you're doing is you're eavesdropping on each of the conversations that's happening on that network. You eavesdrop, and this thing is full of patterns, full of stuff that looks at it and says, oh, this is doing that, that is doing that. So this is where you start. You've got a big flat network. Have a look at what's there. What have I got here? What have I got? What do I need to do? What traffic can I see? Oh dear, that's really bad. You need to deal with that straight away. I've already just spotted something that's going on because I've listened to the traffic and I've seen it. The next thing you do is a gateway is an IP address. So an IP address, people who don't care, it's quite boring, but it means if I can't find you here, think of it like a postcode. So a postcode says, if you're not in with my, for example, mine might be IB11 is my postcode. If I can't find it in the IB11 postcode range, I'll send it to the post office. So what we're doing is we're going to restrict that. You have to ask this IP address. So I will take the postcode, what you would see as the post office, and I will become the post office. So I will redirect that traffic through this big firewall that I've built, where I'm able to layer on the inspection. And I start the inspection by keeping it open so I don't break anything, because there's nothing that's going to get used, what you're trying to do, stopped if you break something straight away. So you put it in fairly passively, and then you begin to route the traffic through this network, and then you begin to look at it, and then you begin to use all these controls that you've paid for, really expensive controls that show you, oh, these are the URLs we're talking to. That's really, really, really bad. You should never be talking to that. These are signatures that I've found for known attacks. This is a known attack signature. Because I'm now going through a layer 7 firewall, I can actually see that from your network there's command and control in there. It's done. It's malware.
So you're listening for stuff that is beaconing out, connecting out at a lot of sort of intervals, sort of short periods to avoid detection. You're almost detecting those gaps and those breaks to say the only thing that can possibly be is badness.
Exactly. And then the third thing, I know you've asked me for free, but I'm going to give you the second biggest control that you can have, and this is segmentation. The second biggest control you can put to your organization is control the DNS. Really, really, really control the DNS. And if you don't control the DNS, you're in trouble. Now, I'll tell you one way that the DNS will get you as well if you don't control the DNS. And this is the challenge I'm facing at the moment. Lots of people don't realize that if you go into Chrome and you go into Safari and you go into Edge, there's a privacy setting in there. So the privacy setting you put in there use encrypted DNS. So it puts DNS across an encrypted channel. So you don't know what those DNS requests are. So this control that I've got in place that says that's a known bad domain, that's a fast flux DNS domain, that's really bad, stop it there. There's a bypass now. You can use HTTPS to do it. So that's the level you got to get to now, where you're aware of both traffic types. You only see that traffic types if you've got that big, clever box in the middle that's looking for these signatures, for looking for this type of traffic. You get the right firewall in place, then you've got a number of blades you can put in across a flow. A number of blades that puts in across a flow. What you've done is you just reduce your risks massively. So your big flat network is now a segmented network. So the risks that you had here are now to about 15% of the risk that you had. And those 15% are going to be something else. But you've just cut the head off the snake, basically, by doing these things. You know you've taken the worst of it out of play.
So I'm going to throw you a curveball, and I'd be really interested to know your thoughts on this. Loads of people are moving away from on-prem, and they're starting to move a load of stuff into the cloud. Time was you had, and we've talked about securing the DNS. So this is the phone book for your network that equates nice human names with computer IPs for everything, so everything can talk to one another. And it used to be you had a server sitting on the network that would have this list of names, list of computer names. You're off to the races. If you have a cloud native environment, so you stuff everything in the cloud, you're trying to get rid of all your on-premise servers and systems, what the hell do you do with DNS?
This is where we drop another TLA into it. So this is another TLA we're going to drop into now. Azure Active Directory. Azure Active Directory. So everyone's used to Active Directory on-prem. So what we now got is, as soon as you move to Azure Active Directory, there is no on-prem. Everything that you used to get on-prem is no longer done. It's all done in a cloud provider. So the two questions you're asking me there, first one is about the DNS filtering. So the DNS filtering happens before any of this. The first thing you've got to do is you've got to have a DNS inspection service. So that DNS inspection service is going to know the category of what's bad command and control networks. Now, command and control networks, in terms of malware, is the head of the snake. So what that's doing is, if you've got a botnet, so what a botnet is a piece of malware on each device that sits there, passively does nothing, and sends a packet out to what's called a bot herder. So the bot herder is this central device that's sitting up there waiting to deliver instructions to malware infected computers. That's what it does. So when you go bang, I'm going to activate the botnet herder, it sends instructions. And that's where your encryption starts to happen. That's where the ransomware starts to happen, when that botnet gets activated. That's where your trouble is. You now get all your devices encrypted, or you're performing a DDoS on someone else from your control computers. That's what's happening. Cut the head off the snake. If you can't connect to the botnet herder, you can't get the command and control to happen. How do you connect to the botnet herder? DNS. So all the fast flux DNSs, anything that changes regularly, you've got intelligence that does that. If the names change and the IP addresses change on each connection, you know it's bad, you block it. You've got known bad providers, you've got known bad countries that do this sort of stuff, nation state stuff. Cut it off at the head. Make sure that all your DNS is clean. The second part I'm going to add about cloud computing, Adam, and that's why I mentioned AAD. AAD, as your Active Directory, your friend is conditional access. Conditional access is, I cannot stress enough how conditional access is your friend. And I cannot stress enough how you need to understand Azure Active Directory as your IDP, your identity provider. So your identity provider at the moment, when you're on-prem, is your domain controller, because that's what you're asking to log in. And your domain controller is what you use to log into all the devices, to log into servers, to grant you access. That's now moved into the sky, and it's controlled by Microsoft. So you need to filter access to that in a very, very big way. You need to use conditional access, and you need to really, really understand how to leverage that IDP that you've got in Azure. There's so many things you need to do in it.
All right, so let's talk conditional access, because I agree, conditional access is super important. It's also really easy to misconfigure. And if you don't know what you're doing, it can become a hindrance to security rather than a help. The amount of people I run into, and I'm working in their cloud environments, I'm trying to break in, and they come a cropper because they've got good rules, they've got good policies. However, there's this one group of people or this one individual, and they say, oh, they don't need MFA. And you have a hole, a gap that you can get into the network. So conditional access, it's a good thing, but you do need to get it right. How do you get it right?
First thing I'm going to start with conditional access is there's a number of subjects I'll talk about on this. So remind me to come back to PIN, because PIN is probably the most important. Privileged identity management and just-in-time access, but I'll come on to that in a minute. Right. So the first thing I'm going to ask you, back in the old days, we used to do this when we had a device on the network. We mentioned Adam coming in and putting a Pi on my network. So Adam sent a cleaner in. The Pi, for those who didn't know, is a little bit of tech, a little bit of kit with an SSD in it, or a bit of memory, with a very, very fine operating system, hacking operating system that gets activated over PoE, which is power over Ethernet. So as soon as I plug it in, it comes to life, gets an IP address, and then tunnels out to the internet, right? How'd you stop that? So on a switch, how do you make a switch stop that? And there used to be a technology. Now, this is a really nasty acronym, .1x. .1x is 802.1x. And what that meant is when I plug onto your switch, the first thing I'm going to do is let me see your certificate. If you ain't got a certificate, you're not getting in. That's how you deal with that. So it was called .1x, and there's several flavors of it. So what we do is we're transposing that now, and we're saying I've got Active Directory AAD. How can I prove the computer that's connecting to me is who you say it is? How can I make sure that computer A that's going to trigger access, that I can get access to this banking system, is who it is? And that's where you need to understand compliance. To understand compliance, you need your MDM. So mobile device management is your starting point. You need to have a fantastic mobile device management that marks the devices that are connecting to you as compliant. As soon as you've got that compliancy tag, that's the most important controlling conditional access, that I've got a compliant machine connecting to me. The next thing is a nice to have. It's the way I do it. I'm not saying it's the way everyone else should do it. Is I don't allow on the endpoints we use unfiltered access to the network. If you haven't got a VPN client, you cannot get to the internet. So in that way, I know that when I give you a laptop, you can't connect to anything else. So when it comes back to connect to my network, It's done exactly what it did before. It was as you left it the last time. What that allows me is to put a conditional access control, because I'm using a big set of firewalls in the sky to do this. That's called SASE, which is Secure Access, Secure Edge, that will give me a common IP address. So my conditional access rules now say, is the device marked as compliant? Have we enrolled it onto my network? And have we put a build on there? It's running our build. It's compliant. We know everything about this device. The next thing is it coming from an IP address we trust. And how do we give them that trusted IP address? They have to authenticate to the big firewall in the sky using their Active Directory credentials. If they don't do that, they don't get the IP address, computer says, no, you can't come in.
It's like we were talking about with the firewalls earlier. Where's it coming from? Where's it going to? How does it get there?
Exactly. You got it. And that's it. Conditional access, then you start to really, really layer that on. And I could talk for hours about conditional access now. You can get it wrong, but we're going to run out of time. But maybe for the next one.
We need to
get invited back.
And we need to do a proper session on conditional access, because I think it's something that loads of people mess up. And it's only going to become more important as more people are moving their stuff up into the cloud, sacking off the internal premises stuff.
You got it.
You talked about PIM, you talked about just in time. I'm going to have to, when I edit this, I'm going to have to put all the acronyms in like little subtitles along the bottom so people understand what's going on. But talk to me about PIM and just in time.
So admin accounts. So if you do your job properly, no one's got an admin account, or no one has an admin account as part of their function. So the function you've got that I log in and I do day to day has minimum rights. It has rights, just enough rights to do what I need to do. So when you get engineers like me who need elevated rights, the elevated rights, I'll have a separate account. So I'll have an admin account. So my admin account is where I can do real damage. My admin account, I can do you so much damage. And not only do I have an admin account that would get me into Active Directory, I also might have an admin account that gets me into, example, if I was using Meraki firewalls or Meraki switches, that gets me into that gets me into the others, that gets me into all of these things. So the next part to talk about how you control those is enterprise applications. So enterprise applications is you register every security console that you need access to. You register it, you link it to your IDP, so you have to use that one admin account. That's only one admin account that accesses all these things. So I need this admin account. So the first thing I do in this admin account is I log into Active Directory and I think, right, I need to do something on there. Oh, I can't do it. Why can't I do it? Oh, because I need to request access to do the function I'm doing, which is privileged identity management. To go into privileged identity management, to run a function to delete a number of users, I can't do it unless someone says, yes, it's okay for you to do that. So one of the colleagues in my team will approve my access. Not only that, I put a conditional access control against these admin accounts. Are you coming from a known IP address? Are you coming from a known computer? If you aren't, you're not doing it. You're not doing it at all. I've got a break glass account that I keep hidden somewhere if things go terribly wrong. But unless I know who you are, and unless you're coming from my computer in a known location, you ain't doing it, mate. And even when you come to do it, someone's going to authorize you to do that function. That's the level of control you need. And then you need to put the same thing across every admin console that you've got.
Gotcha.
Do you want me to explain a bit more admin accounts, elevated rights or anything like that, or should we do that on another one?
Yeah, because I think people struggle sometimes with admin accounts. I mean, how many accounts should you have?
In theory,
accounts come into.
You should have 2 accounts.
Right.
You've got 2 accounts in your Active Directory. You've got your standard account you do day to day, and then you've got a privileged account. So the privileged account, your admin account, is set up so it can connect you to any system you need to connect to. So you've got 2 accounts you actually use, and there's a real reason behind that, but we'll talk about that on another one. Break glass accounts is, and we've all been there, is I have no access to the internet. We've seen this where AD has gone down and you can't authenticate because their IDP has gone down in AD. It's happened. So I need to make an urgent change. What do? I've got a hard-coded password that I keep in a password vault that I need to use MFA or something to get into that gives me access directly to Active Directory, but only 2 or 3 people in the organization know about it. So that's a break glass account. So it's like a backdoor account.
Yeah, makes sense. Yeah.
So
don't ever tell Adam what your backdoor account is, because that would be really bad.
yeah. So got a question about this. The break glass accounts obviously incredibly sensitive, and I can't remember quite what the advice now is around whether you have MFA tied up with them, but by dint of you need them in an emergency, it's common that people don't have MFA attached to their break glass accounts. At the same time, do you want one person to have both username and password to the break glass account? Do you want someone to have the whole password? Do you have some kind of escrow arrangement?
Yeah.
And for your setup, you're in high sensitivity financial environments. What do you recommend? What do you push for? Do you say, no, if we need a break glass account, we need it yesterday, no monkey business, this is where it lives, use it if you need it?
I think what I do in these things, I try to be pragmatic. You need to sometimes be pragmatic, and it's a question of, that question is, who watches the watchers, is what you're saying there.
Yeah, that's right.
Who watches the watchers? So there's three things that I look at. First thing is, it's okay to do. The second thing is, really, really don't do that. And the third thing, it's okay to do that, but in time you're going to have to go back and fix that because it's a bit iffy. And then there's a third one, which is never, ever do that. And so this is where I contradict myself on this. Sometimes you need access and you need to trust the people. So it goes into the first category, that if you've got a break glass account, you need to have the right governance around it and you need to have the right people. But if MFA isn't working because there's something broken in Azure, what's the point of having a break glass account? It won't work. It's not pragmatic. You need to get in. You need to get in now. Your company is not able to do what it needs to do. You earn X amount of money every hour. By not being able to get in and do this, because I've put too many security controls in place, I've just shot myself in the foot. So sometimes you have to trust the human, and you just need the right governance controls across that. So that's my answer there.
Right, that's really handy, and I think that's going to clarify it for a lot of people, because when you get deep into the security engineering, you can go completely nuts and say, oh, we're going to have a bit of this, we're going to have a bit of this, and you've got all these wonderful controls, and then when the evil hour arrives and everything's on fire, you realize you've locked yourself out.
I can give you an analogy of this that I've had so many times. When everything was on-prem, how do you keep your passwords? I've got a password vault, and I'll keep it on this server here, this server here. This server here is virtualized, and it's on this big server here, and we're patching this server at the moment, so it's down. But the patching hasn't worked, so this server is down. So we need the password to get into the console to fix this virtualized server. You can't, because it's in a virtual image stuck in the middle and you can't do anything about it, and I don't know what the password is. Oh no.
So I do have a couple more things, and we're gonna have to get you back, Greg, because I feel like we could talk all day and it would just be solid gold. We talked about segmenting the network, chopping it up based on function. We talked about getting intrusion prevention in place. Basically, when someone evil lands on your network, can you see them?
Yep.
We talked about locking down your admin accounts. Make sure you've got as few as you can get away with. Make sure you know where your break glass accounts. Make sure you're being pragmatic with your security and you're not going completely nuts and making it so you can't move when you do experience a breach or you do experience a system outage. The thing I wanted to ask, almost going back to the network intrusion prevention thing, and it goes back to that pragmatic thing you were talking about. It's really easy to go completely nuts and say, oh, we're going to have all the logs, and every SOC in the land has this problem, and they've got this log fatigue, right? They've got so much information, they don't have the people to interpret it, and they don't have a good quality of signal, that they miss what matters. It might be something important is happening, but damned if they can tell you. How do you handle that volume of logs? And what would you say is the most important thing to focus on if you were just going to focus on a few things when you're setting up this system for the first time?
Log bloat. Log bloat is a killer. Log bloat is a killer. And I can give you an example now that if you use a VPN and you've got a VPN client, most of your traffic Or I can guarantee a good 34% of the traffic you see is DNS requests that you can't see into. So what's the point of keeping it? So all you're going to say is this device made 1,000 DNS requests, which is very, very simple to do in the space of about 3 minutes. Of that 1,000 DNS requests, there is no value in that log, none whatsoever, because it's the way computers work. So why keep it? This is where you've got to go up the layers. You care about for your logs. The thing that people get confused of, you only keep loads of logs for forensics. That's it. So if you need to forensically reconstruct, that's what you need them for. If you've got the configuration done correctly, and you've got your layer 4, your layer 5, your layer 6, and layer 7 controls in play, it's going to give the information you need. The other thing that I'll add to that about logs where they become less important is decryption. So if you're decrypting, the lower level stuff you don't need, because it ain't going to tell you anything. It really, really isn't going to tell you anything from a network with 1,000 devices on it, producing DHCP logs, producing DNS logs, DHCP is an addressing, all of these things. It's just bloat. You never look at it. And in the SOC, people just ignore it. They get they get log weariness and log blindness. So you need to be specific on what you actually need to monitor.
Yeah. Awesome. So we've covered so much stuff.
We haven't even got into DevOps yet. Wait till we get into DevOps.
We haven't even touched DevOps. We'll have to have some dedicated sort of deep dive style ones where we just talk about one topic, and we're going to be talking to a really specific group of people.
Yeah.
But when we were setting this up, you were talking about having a good story you wanted to share with us. Does that take 5
minutes? It can take 5 minutes if we've got enough time. This is a really funny story. This is back in the day. This is back in the day, and I was working in London on a road called the Minories, and I was running a company there that don't exist, so I can probably say I wasn't running a company, but I was looking after the security there. And so I was training. It was a Friday night. I'd gone from work, I'd gone training, I've got my gear on me, and Adam will remember this, NetSaint and Nagios. It was monitoring software. So monitoring software says this service has gone down, or this service has gone down, or this service has gone down. So I'm training, and you normally get 1 or 2 coming. You don't need to worry about that. I'll deal with that Monday. And you're thinking, oh, what do you mean my core has gone down? What do you mean the core of my network, which is the great big switches that you use that everything goes through? If this thing dies, game over. And I'm thinking, well, I'm not going to relax now. I can't go home and deal with this on Monday, because this is what we would term in IT as brown trousers. It's scary. When this happens, it's scary. You've got a problem, right? So I thought, I've gone into the office. I've jumped on the bus because I was in Hackney. So I had to get a bus from Hackney down to where I was in the city. So I've gone in, I've got my pass, I've let myself in, and in the server room door, I'm thinking, that's not supposed to look like that. That's not supposed to be kicked in and open. And I'm thinking, we've got door entry systems and everything in here. We've got door entry to get into this door here, and we've got a door entry to get in that door. But both doors were open and split. And we've got 24/7 security. And I'm thinking, oh no. And this is one of those things where you think this is a real element of surreality about it. This is so surreal. You open the door and you look in, and I've walked up to what was called a Catalyst 7200 Cisco switch, great big bleeding thing. And in there you've got blades, and these blades do specific functions. Like you've got one for delivering fiber to other switches. You've got one where your servers are plugged in. All gone.
They've just been
completely empty chassis. All the fiber had been cut. So all the fiber that was going to all the other floors had all been snipped. Pair of grips. Boom, 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 boom. All the Cat 5 had been pulled out. And it's like one of those moments where you think, there's only one thing to do here, and it's headless chicken mode. I have no idea what to do now. This is something that what am I going to do? I almost wanted to cry, sit down and cry and suck my thumb, and hopefully when I opened my eyes, it had gone away, but it hadn't. So what do you do? So that was one of the longest, scariest weekends of my life. So the first thing you do, you call the cops, and the cops come along, and the cops forensics come along, and they say, yeah, it's easy to get into them locked doors. So that's your first lesson. Those locked doors that you think are mag locked with cards, you just put your foot against it, kick it, and you pull it, and it opens. So they've done it on both doors. So the handles pull outwards, so that's how they got in. To cut a long story short, what did I need to do? So there's nothing I could do that night because it was panic stations while I made plans. So I had a cupboard full of old gear because I'd literally replaced with new blades. So I had all the old blades in a locked cupboard. But the strangest part of the story was, right, I was going to go home. I got a cab to go home that night, and you go past Whitechapel Hospital on the way home, right? And it was about 2 o'clock in the morning. I was going to be back in at 9 o'clock or 7 o'clock to start the rebuild. I needed to go and get some sleep. And as we pulled up to the traffic lights, I saw a Smurf. And I mean it, I saw a bloke dressed up who'd obviously been out on the beer that night to a party or something, completely blue, with a nappy on and with the white thing on. And I thought, am I dreaming? Is this real? Has this just happened? I've just seen a Smurf. But anyway, cut that short. We come in the next day, and it was a case of all hands on deck, get everyone in the next day that we could, and try and piece together as much as you could. And by the Sunday afternoon, we had it back. The moral of the story is I've spoken about a lot of technical controls and a lot of attention to detail and a lot of these things, but there's always going to be some swine that's going to kick your door in and cause you problems. So there's a physical threat as well. So
Brilliant.
That's one of them.
And on that line.
Yeah, brilliant. I mean, I've got to say, guys, personally, you talked at the beginning, Greg, about there's different roads, and we didn't get onto the other road. We stuck with the tech road. And as a non-hands-on tech person, I really enjoyed your explanation. So first off, thanks. And thanks to you both as well for explaining to us less non-technical people what some of these things mean, because, just for the benefit of anyone watching, we try to do a lot of things with the podcasts. We're aware everybody's somewhere different on the security maturity curve, and there's different disciplines. There's people like Greg who are very much hands-on technical. There's people that are more business oriented, that are talking more about business risk and these kind of things, and it takes all of us working together. But that personally was very insightful for me. I've always wanted to get into computers and never quite made it. And so when someone says to me, "Oh, you're in security, what is it you do? Do you do this level or that level?" And when I get out of my depth, I just say, I've got guys who do that kind of stuff for me, and that's these kind of guys. And I'm pretty sure Greg would be happy for you to join him on LinkedIn if you're part of the community and you've got questions. I know he'd love to share. Absolutely, certainly you'll be seeing him again, because we'll be having him back. And we really could go on all day, so we'll just have to break it down over a number of different casts. So thanks everyone for taking the time to watch. We hope you find it useful, and we'll see you on the next security tips.
Yeah, it was great fun. Thank you, boys. That was really good fun.